So I'm pretty much done with this phase of the car. This is all preparation for clearing out room and putting a turbo on this easier, and some fact finding and stuff like that too. So in summary, did the aluminum intake manifold swap from the older 4.2 liters. There really shouldn't be any performance gains from that. Maybe. Plastic runner inner diameter versus aluminum runner inner diameter. I don't know, man. On a 4.2, I mean, come on. Anyway, so realistically, it's I like to run an aluminum manifold because I want to polish it, and I want to polish the valve covers. And there's pre-drilled taps inside of the manifold. You can see I tapped that one for 8th MPT. Just took the OEM plug out and then drilled it and tapped it for 8th MPT. There's another one back there that's capped right now. That's really convenient for my fuel pressure regulator later. So cool. I don't think you'll lose power. I don't think you'll gain power with this manifold. It's just the plastic ones of this era. All the manufacturers went away from aluminum. If you look at, this is an 09 car, early 2000s, there was aluminum intake manifolds on some stuff and plastic on other stuff, and then everything just went plastic after that. And when you turbo a car, it's much easier to plug emissions type systems on an aluminum manifold or repurpose those ports by tapping them and stuff like that than it is on a plastic manifold. So that was the whole reason for that swap, is just to make my life easier for the turbo stuff. And it'll never get brittle and crack. I know the plastic manifolds. I got a buddy with a C6Z06 on 20 pounds of boost. He's never cracked his intake manifold. It's a plastic LS6 intake manifold, maybe LS7. At any rate, so the plastic manifolds not like being cracking and stuff like that, unless it's problematic for your era. I wouldn't consider that a reason. This intake setup is really ugly and shit, but if I remove this, you can see what I had to do to the throttle body, or I needed to. This is a bead ring by Monkey Fab, and the reason why I welded this on, this short piece of 3.5 on, is because the throttle body snout is very, very short. So blowing boost couplers off and stuff like that would have been all the time kind of thing. But you can see by moving the throttle body off to the side actually opened up some room. The throttle body being in the center right here would have been just fine too. But the way any intercooler works is you're gonna have an inlet on one side and an outlet on the other, or two outlets like this, and then I can have a long run for the MAF sensor, this is not what's going to be used. But the the throttle body stuff, basically I just used 3.5 inch and pie cut it, and then just got this flange. It's an 80 mil Bosch flange. Any 80 mil Bosch flange will work because it's just an 82 millimeter Bosch throttle body. And yeah, that flange mates up perfectly. I did drill a hole in the throttle body, about 5/30 seconds, and that is because if you look at the idle air circuit from the stock throttle body, it goes to the back of the intake manifold. So I basically just deleted that, and I just have a check valve in there now that runs up to the brake booster. So without the idle circuit running to the front of the throttle body, the MAF would freak out if you drill a hole in there. It's like 5/30 seconds or something really small like that. Then that becomes your idle circuit, your idle air circuit, and then your MAF is then again happy. So the car has no check engine lights, no problems with the MAF, no nothing. But if you're going to delete that idle air circuit, before you run the car and it relearns with no idle air circuit, just drill a hole in the throttle body blade. It's pretty common on pretty much all V8 manufacturers. I did, for informational purposes, I did gauge. They have a restrictor in the idle air circuit, little plastic piece, the factory one, and I did gauge that as just a little bit bigger than 5/32. So that's why I just drilled just ever so small of a hole, and everything seems to be working fine because that's the new idle air circuit. So that's throttle body mods if you're going to delete that circuit and to make your MAF happy. If you're not using a MAF, don't worry about it. Just run the throttle body as it is and you'll be fine. The coolant mods are all to shove all the coolant system over to make more area, more room up here for the turbo stuff. So this lower pipe, I had to make, comes out, it's all 1 3/4 inches. There's many ways to skin the cat. I just chose to do it this way. On the back of the front cover, there is 2 plugs. One is a factory plug or a factory barb that comes from the coolant expansion tank, and that's how you fill, and that's how it connects to the engine, is behind the front cover. And that just, to me, seemed like a huge pain in the ass if that hose ever went out. So basically, when I made this, I just made it connect to the top of this coolant hose right here, the top of this coolant pipe. Again, many ways to skin the cat on that. I didn't have any issues bleeding the car at all. So that was good. The heater return, I also plugged. It's on the back of the front cover. So there's two barbs on the back of the front cover, and I put 2 plugs in there, and they're M20 by 1.5, I believe. So if you take the front cover off and you weld a drain bung down beneath the crank pulley, I don't know if you guys can see it, way down there, right there. That's a drain bung for the turbo, so you have to take it off anyways if you choose the front cover. I just chose to relocate those because now all I have to do is remove this AN right here, and then there's a hose clamp just right there, and I can replace that heater hose like super easy. So that's why I did it. I did it out of convenience, and also I didn't want to run all these hoses and all that stuff behind the front cover. I like to simplify things as I work on them, because who knows, you're probably going to be working on it more, right? So let's see, what else did I do? The front cover, that's pretty much it. I found one of the timing chain tensioners in there broken, so I guess it's a common thing. I talked to a couple of the guys who run some of these shops, and they say, yep, when we take the front cover off, usually we find them broken. So I just replaced that. The car's got 57,000 miles. As far as the air bleeds, I just did 2 air bleeds on the top, just like factory. One comes from the radiator and comes up, and then one comes from, get this sort of on there. One comes from this little coolant pipe right here. If you have an MC Shift model, you won't have the trans cooler right there, but you will have an air bleed down there. Just run it to your reservoir. And then the reservoir is just mounted here, and it's solid. Same pressure cap as OEM, and I haven't had any issues with coolant leaks or any weird rattles or anything. But it did free up a lot of room, and now my pipes are made out of aluminum, and I don't have to buy Maserati stuff anymore. I can just buy these 1 3/4 silicone couplers, which are, by the way, 5-ply, and the OEM hose is like a 2-ply or a 1-ply. So strength and all that kind of stuff. And anyway, I did replace the problematic hose in the back when I had the intake manifold off, as you should, because that's how you get to it, is you just take the intake manifold off. And I ended up using some really big hook type, like what you would use to separate a hose from a pipe. And I just hooked them into the one-time clamps and just hit them until they were loose. And then I pulled that hose out. And then I put a new hose in with worm clamp. So that hose has been replaced. The throttle body, we talked about. The coolant system mods. I've driven a car. I live in Arizona. It's 115 out today. Driving around all day, and no coolant temp issues or anything like that. So, I mean, there shouldn't be. I didn't really do anything. I just changed the way some of the pipes were routed, but I didn't really change the overall design or anything. So anyway, yeah, it's just a more robust style of the factory system. No coolant system issues with that. Catch can, I did around 120 degree fitting. I welded -10 bones onto the factory nipple there. I just chopped off the nipple and welded -10 bones to it. And then you can see it over here, same thing on this valve cover. So these just unscrew like factory. You can use a socket on them and all that kind of stuff, because that is the factory threads that go into the valve cover. I just chopped off the, there's a balance tube that goes across these. So now this is the balance tube and it vents to atmosphere. Before, that balance tube didn't vent and it relied solely on this breather filter getting sucked into the intake to get rid of the crankcase pressures. Now the crankcase pressures will just leave out through here, and that's why that's plugged. And then I'm working on a CNC plug for that to cap that, to get rid of that. But for now, it's just plugged so it doesn't make a mess. But they're both ran to this catch can, and then the catch can's just bolted to the factory spot right there. And then I made and welded a little plate. And it's pretty simple. It gets rid of crankcase vapors and crankcase pressure. Well, yeah, both. If it stinks too much, this is like maybe 1.5 inches. I might just, silicone coupler or run 1.5 inch pipe out through the bottom of the car. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But that's the catch can setup. An accumulator setup down there. So this is the FOA accumulator, and the jury's still out on it. I've pressurized it to 10 or 15 PSI. The orifice is really small in it. It has a solenoid that's attached to it. Right now I just have it secured to that plastic under tray. And then I have it running to a switch fuse in that fuse box right there. So when the power switch is on, it turns on. Then I just have it grounded on the front cover. So, I noticed that the oil pressure light goes away as it's starting. So I think that's good. And I never had any rattle. So I'm just doing this as preventative for the cam variator rattle. I don't know. It's just on there. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It is doing something. Like I said, I pressurized it with 15 or 18 PSI of air pressure on the back. For those of you who don't know, there's basically just a shuttle piston in here that has some O-rings on it, and then you pressurize the back of this with air down there. So there's a nipple back there that you pressurize this with air, and usually it's 10 PSI or something like that. I did 15. I did a little bit more because that orifice that comes out of this thing is really small, to try and give it a little oomph on the way out. But basically what'll happen is you'll pressurize this with 15 PSI. It'll shuttle the piston all the way forward. And then when you start the car, the oil pressure will push the piston back until it kind of floats around and finds its happy medium. So it'll take up a quart and a half, 2 quarts, somewhere along those lines, give or take. And then when you shut the car off, the solenoid shuts and traps the whatever operating pressure it was at, it traps in the actual cylinder itself. Then the next time you start, it energizes, the solenoid opens, and then it kicks out that oil into the engine, preventing dry starts and, you know, filling the system with oil pressure and that kind of stuff. And there you go. You don't get a cam variator rattle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an oil pressure tap right there. I'm going to put my oil pressure gauge right there because that's going straight to the back of the block. If you guys Google AccuSump on Granturismo, I just did it like those guys did. I just chose to mount the accumulator down there. But I'm, you know, so that would see system oil pressure after the isolation valve of the accumulator. And so that's where I'll get my engine oil pressure for the engine. And yeah, so I don't know if it's working yet all the way. It's hard to tell with these. Some of the guys say that their engine oil light goes away when they open the solenoid, but this isolation valve, I'm telling you, the orifice is teeny tiny. Those guys are using like 1/2 inch sized orifice valves. So when it opens, it dumps oil into the engine at a really high rate of speed. This one doesn't. This one dumps it at a really slow rate of speed. So if you wait 2 or 3 seconds then start the car, as I'm starting, the oil pressure light goes away. So it seems like it's working. I don't know. We'll see. But it's not leaking or anything. None of the fittings are leaking or anything like that. So that's good. That's really, I mean, the main thing. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we're back where we were anyways, as long as it doesn't leak. And as long as it's energized, it's acting like an accumulator would anyways, providing the engine with oil pressure if it ever comes up with a starvation issue when it's running. So I also ran the turbo oil feed prematurely because I didn't want to take the intake manifold back off. And if you look it up on the on some of the forums, there is an orifice plug on the back of the engine. So the oil dummy light, the low oil pressure light switch, the low oil pressure switch, is at the back of the engine, and you'll see it if you take the intake manifold off. On that same manifold, there is a brass plug that goes in, and it's like M14 by 1.5. So I did M14 by 1.5 to -4, and then I'm running -4 all the way up to this fitting. I haven't cracked it to see, but you know, that's where most guys put an aftermarket oil pressure gauge. So that should be seeing oil pressure. So that's kind of all the preparation for the turbo stuff. Oh, I deleted all the air injection stuff. So you'll see none of it's here. None of those stupid little things that go there, and then I blocked off these and all that. All this stuff is gone, except for I did get a check engine light for not having this little solenoid. The air injection solenoid gives you a check engine light because it says it's got an open circuit. So all I did was plug that back in to get rid of the light, and it hasn't come back, and I've been driving the car. So it's not doing anything, but that's the only thing that you need to keep from the air injection stuff is that little solenoid down there, or else you get a check engine light. Otherwise, the air injection stuff was fairly simple. These are little block off plates I chose to use on this side. And then on this side, the whole piping and everything is gone because it's easier to get down to the manifold. But this side, I really didn't feel like messing with it. So for now, it's just blocked off there until I figure out that I want to actually go after it and tackle it. The MAF sensor stuff. So if you do this, you can run the car with the factory MAF setup. Sorry, I'm being a little crude with this thing. But this is just the stock housing for the MAF. It's 4-inch. It's a 4-inch housing, and all I did was cut it where it was molded to the rest of the air filter housing, and then clean it up, and then that's it. It doesn't throw me any weird codes. It doesn't do anything weird. So if you want to make your own cold air intake, just cut that off. It's 4-inch. This is 3.5. So that's a 4 to 3.5, reducing 90. And then I just shoved a 4-inch filter on the other side of it, and there you go. Couldn't be any easier. This is just, like I said, this is just temporary. Get the car to get it running and do all the checks I need to do after you make, you know, so many changes all at once. You need to check and make sure everything still runs right and everything still works right. But yeah, that's other than that, the car is still stock with just a muffler delete, and that's what I've done so far to prep for boost. If you don't do anything with the intake manifold, you got to do all this. So but it is good to know that you can just cut this end off, and then you got 4-inch there. So if you want to make your own custom cold air intake or whatever, just cut the MAF out, the housing that it actually sits in. This is the stock housing. And then there you go. Super simple. Like I said, no check engine lights. Car doesn't run weird. It drives just like it did factory, even though it's got two drastically different intake manifolds. They don't appear to be that different to really have the car notice any difference. It's not any faster, it's not any slower, and drives and runs just like it did. So till next update, guys. For what it's worth, there's not a lot of the Maserati guys out there, so this is kind of, we're finding out as we go, so some updates may take longer. Tuning and stuff is going to be difficult, but somebody's got to make the jump, and it looks like it's going to be me. So we'll get it figured out. We'll have a rowdy little car. It'll probably sit at 600 horsepower for a little while, and yeah, we'll have some fun.